Hello, welcome back to Physics Teacher. In today's episode, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know in order to properly use Desmos to help you in your math classes. Make sure you stay till the end because at the end, I'm going to use Desmos to create a picture of a Minion character. So stay tuned. Alright, so if you're using Desmos on your computer, you don't need to install anything. You just need the internet, so you can Google Desmos and open their graphing calculator, and this is what you're going to see. Now you can start by going over here and add any equation you like. For example, y equals x squared. And you just do a little up arrow to get your squared. And there you have an equation. Now if you wanted to restrict that to a certain domain, you're going to use these curly brackets. And for example, I can then write my domain. Let's say -2 is less than x, which is less than 2. And then your curly bracket. So there's your domain, and it appears just like that. Now you can also change the color. Now if you just click over here, it'll disappear. But if you click and hold, you'll get these options. So you can make your line dotted, or you can change thickness to whatever thickness you like, and you can change color as well. Alright, next, inequalities. So inequalities would be something if I were to write, for example, y is less than -2. And there it shows you in color everything where y is less than -2. Now, inequalities is actually a good way to add color if you're going to do any art project. But we can also change the color, just as before. And if you don't like that dotted line there, all you have to do is, instead of making this y is less than, make it less than or equal to. Okay? And you won't get that dotted line. You can also make the thickness of that line 0, just to have no line at all. So these equations have been very specific, the ones that I've done here. But I'm going to show you how to do one that isn't so specific, and we can add variables that we can change. So let's do another quadratic, but we'll do vertex form. And if you've learned vertex form in math, it looks something like this. Power of 2 plus k. And then I can go ahead and add sliders for whichever variable I want, or all of them. And then you can see as I change a slider, it changes the equation and shows me a different quadratic. And I can change that to whatever I like there. And you can see how it affects it. Let's get rid of that one. Now, the sliders have a step, right? They go from -10 to +10, and you can see they go by about 0.1. If you wanted to change that, just left click on one of the steps there, and you can change the range. Maybe you want it to go from -20 to 20, and instead of going by 0.1, maybe just by step 1. So now you'll see it goes from -20 to 20, and each time you click and drag it, it only changes by a value of 1. So that's how you can change this step. So next, let's say I wanted to create a piecewise function. So to do that, what I'm going to do is create two functions and then put them together. So let's have f and x, and let's copy the function I have right there. So a is -2.9 times x minus h, which h is 0, so we just have x squared, and plus k plus 2. So this is a perfect copy. Let's do a different function. So I'm going to move this over a bit here. And we're going to move this slightly, like this. I want it to touch. It doesn't have to. You can create any piecewise function you want. It doesn't have to be continuous. That looks pretty good. So let me write that one. I'm going to call it g of x. And that's going to equal our a value, so -4.9 times x minus h, where h is 1.8 squared, and then plus k, where k is 0. All right. So now I can make this vertex form sort of invisible there. And I've got my two functions, f of x and g of x. So to make a piecewise function, we're going to call this h of x. You can call it whatever you want. I am going to have these curly brackets, and then I need a domain for my first function. So let's make it between, let's say, this point here, which is minus 1.2, I'll say. I'll just round that. Minus 1.2 is less than x, which is less than, let's do right here, 1.2. I'll just round that as well. And then I'm going to do a colon, and that is for the function f of x. So you can see it's put there in red now. Now I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to separate my other function by a comma. So now put a range. Let's make it minus, nope, just make it positive. 1.2 is less than x, which is less than, let's say, let's go right over here, 2.4. We'll go with 2.4. And then colon, and that's for the function g of x. So now you can see if I sort of make these two invisible, you can see your piecewise function right there. Now they don't quite touch. I kind of wanted to make them continuous. And after playing around a bit with your domain, you can get whatever piecewise function you want to create. Now another thing I can do is I can put a point on that function. You can put a point anywhere. If you just do coordinates, for example, 2, 2, right? There's a point, and if I want, I can label this as whatever I want, point, right? If you had a line going through there, right? And you can give names to lines too if you want. You can do this and then hit the underscore, line. So I have a line with equation x, and then I can choose a point on that line and just call the line line. It's very imaginable. Lots of imagination went on right, for that one. Okay, so you can give names to equations, and you can label those equations or label points. But what I want to do for right now is I want to put a point on my piecewise function h of x. And to do that, what I'm going to do is, again, coordinates, just with brackets. I'm going to have some value b, and then I'm going to have it on h of b, like that. Now this isn't going to work because my problem here is it says I've defined h in more than one place. I have it here, and I have it here. So this is where naming things can come into an advantage instead of just using one letter. This one, for example, is line, right? So over here, I can change this to something else, P, for example. And now it shouldn't be a problem. And I can add a slider. And so this slider now, as I move it, changing the value of b, it will show me different points on that graph. Right? Now obviously if I go this far, it's not going to show me any point because it goes right off my piecewise function. So perhaps I only want to have b, this is where changing your step can come in handy, between -1 and, or this is -1.12 and 2.28. So I can change this to -1.12 and 2.28, and I can have the step as 0.1. So now it'll only go between those points. And if you hit play, it'll automatically do that. And so you can kind of see now it's almost like an animation, especially if I get rid of this function. Now it just looks like you have a ball or something bouncing around on that ground that I created with the inequality. So you can do lots of art in this sense. Now before I go off and draw my minion for you, because I know I promised I would do that, there's a couple more things I wanted to show you how to do. One is graph settings. So if you go over here, you have settings. Now this is zoom in and zoom out, so you can zoom in or zoom out. Under settings, you can change your grid. You can get rid of it if you want to. You can get rid of the minor lines, right? Or get rid of the numbers, or just get rid of everything. So that's up to you. You can also do polar coordinates if you wanted to. And you can stick arrows on your axes if you wanted to as well. And also, instead of just zooming in or out, you can choose what range you want to look at. Maybe the x-axis, I only want to look between minus 1.3 and positive 2.5. And so now you have more detailed lines here for your grid lines, and you can change the range of your y-axis as well. So maybe between minus 2 and 3. And you can change the steps too if you like. And it will do that for you, however you want to view it. Next thing is I want to show you trig functions, because here you can go between radians and degrees. Now it's automatically set to radians, because if I were to type, well, sine of x, it would do this for me. And if I go and change that to degrees, it does this. Now, it looks kind of strange. It doesn't look like a sine function at all, but remember, we're only going between minus 1.3 and 2.5. And if we have our trig function in degrees, well, one whole cycle goes from, for example, if it's just sine x, 0 to 360 degrees. So if I went between then 0 and 360, then you would see a cycle there. I wrote 260. 360. There you go. There's a full cycle. So depending on whether you want it on degrees or radians, definitely changing the values that you see or view in your axis is there as well. And you can also add labels if you wanted to. Okay. So now I'm going to show you how to draw a minion. Well, you already have the tools now to draw a minion or any other art you want. And if it's your first time, I'm going to show you a good helpful trick that you can use for that. So let me just get rid of all of these that we've been doing. And what you can do is you can go up to here to add. We've been doing expressions, but you could also add tables, right? And you can put in your coordinates. 1, 2, 2, 4, 3, 8, and so on, and it will draw those for you. And you can click and drag to see positions. You can scroll in and out. But another thing you can do is you can add an image. And then you have your minion there. And what you can do is you can change the opacity and make it slightly transparent, so that when you draw your lines or your curves or whatever it is you want to do,